That fine web of scratches across your tabletop isn't in the wood. Tilted under a lamp and the whole surface goes hazy and gray, like fog sitting on the wood. Here's the part nobody tells you. Almost none of that is in the wood. A finish, shellac, lacquer, varnish, polyurethane, is a skin of clear plastic sitting on top, only a few thousandths of an inch thick. That skin is what's scratched, and there's a test that tells you which, for free. Drag a fingernail across the scratch. Glides, that's the finish, and it polishes out. Catches, you're into the wood, and that's a different job. So before you rent a sander, or pay someone $300 or $400 to strip this whole table down, check your nail first. I'm Artie Sterling, 30 years teaching high school shop, 10 more as a finish carpenter, and I've polished more scratched tops than I can count. Now, before you touch anything, you need to know what kind of finish you're dealing with, because it changes what's safe to use on it. Pick a spot underneath the table, out of sight, and put a drop of denatured alcohol on it. Rub gently. If the finish goes soft and tacky, that's shellac, the oldest finish there is, and it's on more old furniture than people realize. If the alcohol does nothing, try a drop of lacquer thinner the same way. Goes soft, that's lacquer. If neither one touches it, you've got a modern varnish, or polyurethane, which is tougher and needs a little more elbow grease. Takes 2 minutes, and it tells you exactly what you're working with. One more thing before you start. Wipe the whole top down with a barely damp rag and a little mild soap, then dry it completely, so you're not grinding dust and old wax into the finish while you work. And make your first pass somewhere out of the way, a corner or underneath the overhang, so you can see how that particular finish responds before you're committed to the middle of the table. Here's the job, and it's the same idea whichever finish you've got. You're not stripping anything off. You're leveling the surface, knocking the tops off those fine scratches with something just abrasive enough to do it, and no more, until light stops catching on the edges of them and starts bouncing back even. That's what shine actually is. It's flat and it's polished. That's the whole trick. The old way is rotten stone or pumice powder, a fine mineral abrasive, cheap, sold in any hardware store that still carries finishing supplies, mixed into a little mineral oil until it's a thin paste. Put a dab on a felt pad and work it in straight lines, with the grain, never across it, light pressure. Check it every minute or so by wiping the oil off with a rag and looking at it under a lamp. When the haze is gone and you've got an even reflection, stop there. Don't be tempted to keep going past that point. If you'd rather not mix your own, a bottle of automotive polishing compound from an auto parts store does the identical job by the identical principle. It's the same idea rubbed on a car hood instead of a tabletop, and there's no shame in saying so. Same rule applies. With the grain, light pressure, check often. For a scratch that's deeper, one line that's clearly cut in further than the rest, you can fill it instead of polishing the whole top. A wax fill stick, warmed a little in your hand and pressed into the scratch with a plastic scraper, works on most finishes. If you've identified shellac, you can also burn in a fresh drop of shellac right into the scratch with a small brush. I'll tell you honestly, the polishing is the easy part. Matching the color of the fill to the wood around it is the hard part, and a fill that's a shade off is more visible than the scratch ever was. Test your color on scrap or an inside edge first. 2 things to watch while you're doing this. Stay off the edges and the corners. The finish is thinnest there, laid down by a brush that just brushed past, and it's the easiest place to cut straight through into bare wood without meaning to. And go slow. You can always take off a little more. You cannot put back what you've taken off, and once you see it this way, that most of what looks like ruined wood is actually a scratched-up film sitting on top of it. You start noticing it everywhere. A hazy cabinet door, the arm of a wooden rocking chair, worn pale and dull right where a hand rests, the top of a nightstand that's held a lamp and a glass of water every night for 20 years, an old roll-top desk lid, crisscrossed with 40 years of paperwork sliding across it, a guitar top nobody's touched in a decade. Same finish, same fix, same fingernail test to start. I had a boy in my 6th period class bring in his grandmother's coffee table. She'd passed it down to him for his first apartment, and the top was covered in that gray, hazy scratching, the kind you get from setting glasses down without a coaster for 30 years. He'd already looked up how to strip and refinish it, and was dreading a whole weekend of it, sanding in the garage with the door open in February, 2 weeks before his mother was coming to see the apartment. We ran his nail across it together, glided every time. Took him one afternoon with rotten stone and a felt pad, and by Sunday he had it in his apartment looking better than it had looked in years. He called it, I remember the word he used, cheating. It isn't. It's just knowing what you're actually looking at. So why doesn't anybody tell you this? I don't think it's anything sinister. There's a whole shelf of touch-up markers and scratch-cover pens at the hardware store, and there are refinishing shops that make their living stripping tables down to bare wood, and both of those are things somebody can sell you. Rub some rotten stone in mineral oil with the grain and check it every minute. Isn't a product, so it doesn't get printed on a label or written on a sign. It's the kind of thing that used to just get shown to you, one driveway at a time, and when that stopped happening as much, it stopped getting said. Now the honest limits, because I'd rather you hear them from me. This is for scratches and dullness in the finish. It is not for a white, cloudy ring where a hot mug sat, and not for a dark stain that's soaked in from a wet glass. Both of those are moisture that's gotten down into the finish, or the wood itself, and they need heat or moisture drawn back out, not an abrasive. Different problem, different day. It's not for a deep gouge that's gone through the finish and into the bare wood either. No amount of polishing lifts that. You're filling or refinishing at that point. And if the piece is veneered, a thin layer of good wood glued over a plain core, often not much thicker than 1/40th of an inch, go very gently or not at all. Aggressive rubbing can cut straight through a veneer in a way it never would with solid wood, and once you're through it, there's no putting it back. One more thing, and it matters. If this is a genuine antique, something with real age and a maker behind it, the original finish and the wear on it can be a real part of what it's worth. Polishing that out can cost you actual money on a piece that was never yours to redo. Ask somebody who knows before you touch it. And a word on safety, because I'd be a poor shop teacher if I skipped it. Work with a window open, mineral oils mild enough, but lacquer thinner and denatured alcohol are not something you want to breathe in a closed room, and both of them are flammable, so no open flame nearby. Gloves if your hands are dry or sensitive, and when you're done, lay any oily or solvent-soaked rags out flat on a shelf or a driveway to dry, never balled up in a bucket or a trash can. A pile of oily rags can heat itself up as the oil cures and catch fire on its own. I've seen it happen in a garage that wasn't mine, and it's not worth the risk to save yourself 30 seconds. That's the whole job. No sander, no stripper, no $300 refinish. Check your nail, find out what finish you've got, and rub it back to even, with something just abrasive enough to do the work. Go take a look at whatever table's been bothering you, and run your nail across it before you decide it's ruined. Then come down to the comments and tell me what's an old trick your father or your grandfather taught you that you still use today. I read every one of them, and they're getting to be the best part of my week. Keep it simple, keep it cheap, and do it right the first time. The folks who built the furniture in this country knew that, and we're going to remember it together.